are Bastiladons, all base variants, any good in patch 6.3.1. We're going to go over this entire group because I think that works for our purposes. Keep in mind that at some point they added immunity to flanking to all of them, so they're all tanky boys, able to hold their own for a time. The Feral Bastiladon is your only single entity monster available from the Tier 2 building. Recruited for 650 gold and 163 upkeep, on Ultra you get 7,698 health. Armor is 140, and that's the main feature of this unit the rest of the way. There's also missile resistance 15%, get used to seeing that. Leadership of 60 is interesting for a feral unit. Speed is 40, charge speed 65, so it speeds up a lot. It will charge well past advancing skinks if in the right position, and that's for better or worse. Melee attack begins at 22. This is low. Attack interval 3.7 is faster than usual. Splash target size is medium, so regular cavalry on down, and in the new system, max targets damaged by splash is 3. That should give you an idea of the limitations. Melee defense starts at 28. Weapon strength comes at 250, split base 90, and armor piercing 160, so while it's a low damage monster as such things go, it pierces armor, and that's nice. Of major importance, there's a bonus versus infantry of 15, which means melee attack 37 versus infantry, and that sounds a lot more respectable, doesn't it? Charge bonus is 34, and mass is 4,000. This unit has Feral Rage 1 and 2, so it goes Rampage when hitting 75% and then 25% health thresholds. It has Primal Instincts for fighting harder when under 50% health, and still somehow in the fight. It causes fear and terror, does not have Hide in Forest whatsoever, has immunity to flanking, and has Wallbreaker. This is new, and I mention this very specifically because this is by far your cheapest and most readily available source for it from building recruitable sources. Just ram a city wall and watch it fall soon enough. The Ark of Sotek version is recruited for 1,000 gold and 250 upkeep, and has kept that value for eons. Health is 32 more from the skinks on the back, I guess. Leadership is 65, 5 better. The rest of melee is the same. There are only 3 things you really need to know about the unit the rest of the way. The first is that it has a ranged weapon that carries poison with its attacks. I'll put up the stats, but as a general rule, you do not rely on this to kill anything, you just greatly rejoice that it's inflicting poison. It's also auto-attack. The second is the Ark of Sotek ability. No use limit, 90-second cooldown, 26-second duration. Affected units get affected by the usual penalties of poison plus the damage over time of Sotek's poison for 8 seconds after the last application, and it's applied every 2 seconds a unit is in the area of effect. What's crucial to convey is that the damage is not spectacular, but it's very good for closing an ugly mass brawl by finishing off a lot of damaged entities. But during the uptime, since it's a different entry in the game files, Sotek's poison will run alongside regular poison, even just from the Bastiladon's own ranged weapon, for minus 30% weapon strength, missile strength, and minus 30% speed on top of that. Well, this isn't an ability, but only the Feral Bastiladon has Feral Rage. The others do not. They don't rampage. That's a consistent advantage, and the third big difference. This means Causes Fear, Causes Terror, Siege Attacker, and Wallbreaker are all present, and immunity to flanking. On that note, the Revivification Crystal version is nearly 100% identical to the Ark of Sotek variant, but it's really good that all the non-ferals can be recruited from the Tier 3 Beasts building, no second building required. So the cost, health, leadership, etc., and the auto-aim ranged weapon from skinks on the back are all identical, as are Wallbreaker, etc. So everything comes down to the crystal. I'll put up the current stats: 60-second cooldown, 100-meter range, single target. Is the only source of healing with Lizardmen with the Resurrects Dead Combatants attribute. But the others in the unit need to be fully healed for that to happen. That puts pressure on your regular sources of healing if you're going to make this happen. Also, if it's like Undead, that's reviving dead entities from that battle itself. We're good, let's move on. The Solar Engine is the most expensive variant at 1200 gold to recruit and 300 upkeep. All of the melee stats are once again 100% the same, but for normal units, fatigue will be a factor. Let's go into the beam of Sotek. Ammunition 20, range 240 is not nearly as far as real artillery. Don't think you just recruited slower Stegodons. Missile strength is officially 363, each beam is flaming attack, magical attack, and inflicts blinded for 10 seconds. Yes, this is the same blinded that I gushed about for Blessed Pterodon Riders in melee. Minus 24 melee attack, minus 24 melee defense, and minus 30 accuracy, good stuff. Use this on some nasty monster fighting your feral Carnosaur, and the Carnosaur wins by a much bigger margin. Direct impacts are base 252 and armor piercing 108. Against armor piercing damage is guaranteed, base is not. Against steam tanks, the blinded will be far more impactful than the actual damage. What helps against massed units, if you hit, is an explosion that's 4 meters in radius, and within that, base 154 and armor piercing 66 damage, which is enough to roast quite a lot of infantry and cavalry in the game, obviously a little more of a sure thing if against lower armored targets. The thing is, blinded is 10 seconds per application, but the base reload time is 16 seconds. That's a concern you didn't have on the Blessed Pterodons. Of course your concern there is that they have glass beaks. Here, it's a stompy Bastiladon firing at a distance. Total accuracy is given as 40 at rank 0, calibration distance 200 means not especially inaccurate until the last 40 meters, calibration area 3 meters means it's actually pretty accurate against single target monsters. Don't count on it against other things, and accurately firing at where a unit was 5 seconds ago as it charges your lines won't necessarily help. So understand those limitations. Penetration cap is large, so it will consistently over-penetrate targets even if a decent distance apart, but max targets penned after the first is 2, and then it goes boom. Since this has some tinkering, I'll throw up the current in-game version of the Solar Engine passive so you see exactly what's going on right this minute. We're finally done the overview of the units. In the redline skills, Beast Driver at 3 pips offers melee defense plus 6, weapon strength plus 12%, which is a bit of a weakness here, and missile strength 8%, especially notable for the Solar Engine variant. Rank 9 and above Bastiladon benefit from Epicentrist for armor plus 10, leadership plus 6, and charge bonus plus 12 flat. They're spread out improvements, but improvements still. In the new tech tree, Tablet of Beasts grants plus 2 recruit rank, Sequence of the Great Beast Resilience provides these units melee defense plus 5 and missile resistance plus 15%, which is very nice. Great Beast Rampage provides melee attack plus 5, the other benefit isn't for them. Beast Keepers gives upkeep minus 15% and recruitment cost minus 10%, and that's it for here, but blessings and ancillaries can reduce the costs of Dino armies further. So how do we use the Bastiladon units? Since there's 4, their use will vary slightly. In all cases, immunity to flanking and Wallbreaker give them far more utility to you than they used to have. So they're not just worse Stegodons. Sorry that's what most people saw them as before. Feral is mainly notable because of how ridiculously early you can get it, and even if it's relatively low damage, it's armor piercing and has insane armor, so you can quite literally use it to solo a General of the Empire style lord and focus on the rest of the battle. It's basic, it rampages, but it's cheap, and from sheer stubbornness, it will survive a lot of stuff. It's just limited in the offense department, but it's some of the cheapest terror any faction can bring in the game. Arc of Sotek is wonderful for its consistency and its value as an anti-blob weapon. I keep reminding that the damage at any one time is not spectacular, but as a heavy foot on the scales, it chews up your opposition over time and brings the moment of victory that much closer. No use limit for the Arc of Sotek ability means time really is on your side. Thousands of Skaven slaves? Eventually they'll die, one way or another. The Revivification Crystal is what I used to call a fun idea but otherwise bad. It's better now. More to the point, you still have a fully functional, not feral Bastiladon with poison from the little guys on the back. And now you have Wallbreaker too. I will absolutely try to bring one in every army and make good use of it. Solar Engine, I have been guilty of trying to will this into an artillery piece at times in the past, but now that I understand how amazing Blinded is, that beam is like an old friend. You will at some point do some friendly fire with it, but if you're blinding an enemy unit, you can put up with a few losses to turn entire fights around. Yes, it's a Bastiladon, but it's not that slow. Reposition as needed and take good angle shots when you can. Blinded competes with all kinds of spell support that costs actual winds of magic. This doesn't. This just costs you 16 seconds of time at rank 0 since it gets better after, until you can fire again. And some ammunition. Just keep in mind, firing and beam travel time slows it down a little. Don't set your sundial by it. Again, even without the beam, you have a perfectly good melee Bastiladon when you're done. And one of the biggest problems of firing tends to be fatigue buildup anyway. Beating fatigue away with a war club is a great way to keep your troops dishing out high levels of damage, and many enemies love the prospect of tiring you out. Countering this on such a hard-to-kill monster can pay off. Even this is a relatively budget option compared to some others, and there's a reason for that. Stegodons are good. Yet, Bastiladons have been improved without increasing their cost, and indeed with even more options to decrease that cost. There is good reason to use them to anchor your armies and give them more spine than they otherwise might have, and in battle it's very simple. They're never the best at killing stuff, they're almost always the best unit you want at taking a hit from low armor piercing value enemies, especially massed troops. And of course that goes double if it's Ark of Sotek, and you can just plop damage over time in the middle of them, and make them hit like declawed kittens anyway. Since the current system limits their splash to 3 targets max, the Bastiladon is more likely to consistently kill a few targets rather than just spread damage between several that will survive, either because it's an Ark of Sotek or because there's other stuff in battle going on. This is better than the old days, but it's still going to take time for a Bastiladon to win. Often the Bastiladon leaves a battle weary, scarred, and with a bit less blood than it started with. But then you realize the Bastiladon is the only one to walk out of that fight at all. If you want things resolved faster, that's what darts, javelins, and comets of Cassandora are for. Take care, and have fun being the bony bulwark against blasphemy.